Welcome to Taking Care of Government Business, hosted by the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. Thank you for joining us today. We are a proud member of the Community Navigator Pilot Program powered by the SBA and coordinated with the University of Syracuse in New York. Uh, we have great resources for you, everything from financial planning to business development, straight down to networking and mentorship. So, if you need those services, please contact the NVSBC and we could connect you with those services hosted by the Community Navigator Program. Couple more notes. Our Fed Academy and DC Networking Dinner is going strong. We have 3 more days before we go on our summer break, April 12th, May 10th, and June 7th. This is a great way to learn from government procurement specialists and your fellow business owners. So please go to the www.nvsbc.org and sign up to one of our networking dinners. And we are growing. We are spreading our wings throughout the country. So we have 2 more networking dinners, one in Norfolk, Virginia on April 25th, and another one in Huntsville, Alabama, May 3rd. So go to www.ndsbc.org, learn who's going to be our guest speaker, and please join us with one of those 2 events. And of course, we have our annual Vets 23 conference. That's from May 22nd to the 25th in Orlando, Florida. We just went over 500 attendees and it's growing. So if you're on a fence and you decided, okay, let me just go and see what this conference is all about, please do attend. We have so many networking opportunities, so many people from the VA come to join us for this event, and you meet with other government procurement agencies. So please join us today. And of course, I'm Earl Morgan. I am the program director for the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. And this is our inaugural Taking Care of Government Business program. And of course, I have this special guest, and I'm glad he's going to join us for this first one. And it's Calvin Mitchell. He is the director of Office of Small Business for the Department of Education. And a little bit about Calvin, and my iPad went out on me again. Just hold on for 1 minute. It always do this to me. I gotta take off the timeout. Here we go. So, Calvin, as director, he provides executive leadership and policy direction for developing and implementing policies and initiatives throughout the department to ensure all socioeconomic categories of small business are afforded opportunities to compete for contracts. Prior to being the director, he was a deputy director for Contracts and Acquisition Management, CAMS. As the CAMS deputy director, he was responsible for overseeing the work of 4 contracting divisions that provide operational procurement services to the Department of Education. Calvin, I am so happy that you got to join us today. We had a couple of glitches, but we got through it. So I am going to go ahead and pass the baton to you. And you on mute.
All right. Thank you so
There
much.
you
Thank you so much. I'll start with the presentation. I guess I'll
Okay.
start sharing here.
Okay.
Give me a moment as I transition here. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can.
All right, fantastic. And thank you to the coalition for having me. It's not lost on me that just this week we celebrated the Vietnam Veterans Day, which is near and dear to my heart. I often just talk about my dad, who has the same name, or I have his name, Calvin Mitchell Sr., who served as a Vietnam vet, who served in Vietnam. Bronze, he got the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, 2 Purple Hearts actually, and a lot of memories from that his service to the country, but he's also a small business owner. So you can see how the confluence of his experience and my position here makes me uniquely endeared with the special responsibility before me to make sure I maximize participation for our service disabled veteran-owned and veteran-owned small business community. So my name is Calvin Mitchell, as was so eloquently described. It's always good to see my good friend Earl. Always love engaging and working with you guys. I want to talk a little bit about the Department of Education, particularly about what we do, and I want to talk about something that's extremely exciting that's happening here at the Department of Education. The Department of Education, I want to always start with the mission because knowing my veteran communities, we know how important the mission is. And the only reason I really wanted to start here is because this is the tip of the spear. All our activities, all our engagement, all the confluence of things that we're doing all flows through what our mission is and what we do here at the Department of Education. So we always have to start with the mission, which is promoting student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. Now, there's several different things that happen through the Department of Education to include our grant programs, our contracts programs. We're going to be narrowly focused on our contracts programs today, particularly around what we've been doing in terms of small business. So we're going to take a look at what has happened in the past, where we are now, and where we're going to be in the future. Because it's not only good for you to kind of know where we've been, but it's also good for you to know where we're going. So I wish this was a place where I could grandstand and brag about all the great things that we're doing in the Department of Education, but the reality is that's not the truth. We have had a significant challenge here at the Department of Education in our small business program. When I started here in 2020, we actually missed our goal of 16%, and we only achieved 14%. It was a hard time for the department, and you would think, hey, Calvin, you started at a time when the department was at the lowest level, and you would be right in saying that. Because a year or two before I started, the department was above 30% small business spending. So imagine what it was like when I walked in and saw the 14%. Naturally, the thoughts that go through your mind is, what happened? There was a lot of things that happened, to include one of our largest programs, federal student aid, and significant programmatic changes that started in the previous administration and kind of followed through. And I'll talk a little bit about that, and you'll be able to see that in the data. But one thing that really kind of bothered me was our low participation in the service disabled veteran-owned small business and the hub zone categories, especially because the service disabled veteran-owned small business, I can understand how sometimes the hub zone is a little more challenging because it changes of the maps, because of some other things that I think SBA has done a good job of really making it a more static program and a more reliable program, and all the work that they've done. But the service disabled veteran-owned small business program has been around for quite some time and has significant stability with it. So I was a little discouraged about where we were. So immediately, what some of the first things I did in terms of looking was, you got to do a diagnosis, right? You got to find what's the root causes of our problems. So we did a lot of training, a lot of assessment, meeting with all the program offices to understand what some of the challenges were. One of the big challenges was knowledge. They weren't familiar with the programs. They weren't familiar with some of the programs. Because they weren't familiar, they weren't supporting it. So what we did was we did a whole lot of injecting uh, uh, of training into the program. And subsequently, we see the dollars kind of itching up slowly and slowly and slowly. One thing I want to point out, you see in 20, our dollars are much higher than they are in 2022. However, the dollars have remained pretty much consistent the whole time, right? So there's not necessarily, again, a victory lap, because of what we've been doing is making sure we can sustain the programs, educate educate those programs, and continue our growth strategy from there. And you can see that what we're doing does work, right? There is some impact. You can see what the hub zone numbers look like in 2020, and not even a half of a percent. And then over time, you can see how it's grown. Now, that application really came with a couple of different things. One was the training piece, one was the outreach piece, and then we were able to establish some contracts that were used throughout the department that were hub zone set aside. So it was really remarkable to kind of see the growth over time and to see that the outreach and some of the efforts and some of the initiatives that we put in place were working. However, we realized it wasn't enough. And I'm going to talk about what we've done to really move the needle and really accelerate the rate of growth. Because, like I said, we've pretty much been sustaining the dollars, but I don't want to sustain. We want to grow the marketplace, right? And it's kind of a misnomer because you look at the percentages, and if you look solely on the percentages, you'll be like, oh, wow, it looks like you're improving. No, not really. We spent less and we just maintained the dollars. So I talked a little bit about what the spend looks like, but I want to talk a little bit about what the Azabu does in terms of engaging to actually influence the outcomes that are positive to increase the aperture for our small business programs. We are your advocates, right? I have a vested interest in you succeeding, right? Because if you succeed, it helps my small business numbers, it helps the community, it helps the veterans, so on and so forth, right? But there's a lot of things that we do here, and I just want to take a time. And if you don't know this, maybe you can tune out for 2 seconds. But I think it's always important for you to know that we are advocates for you, and that you should email us. You can pick up the phone. I put my email there. Why? Because I want you to reach out. I want you to contact me, and more ways than one. Let's talk a little bit about this, right? So outreach, this is outreach part of it. I wanted to really take some time, establish strategic partnerships. So that's internal and that's external. Part of what we do is we are working with our program offices consistently on long-term growth strategies, is the terminology I use, to figure out how we can move the needle in our small business programs so they're not consistent growth. We want exponential growth. We want progressive growth, and we want to plan how that works. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're doing that. But to make sure that growth is in place with that strategic partnerships, I have a team that puts in policy. We have our small business policy guide that hadn't been updated in roughly 10 years. I know, but Samir Zawari on my team had been masterful in working with our teams to make sure that the small business guidance has been in place. We have tools, we have resources that are in place to really build out the program to reduce the barrier for small business. And of course, we establish goals each year with the SBA. Okay, so I want to give you a peek behind the veil of what the main program offices are. It says contracting offices, but think program offices. These are the funding offices that are the main ones. So I say they're the main ones because 96% of our spending comes from these 5 offices. Their missions are vary quite a bit in terms of what they're doing. And so federal student aid, we're pretty much familiar with what they do. Those are that's where the student loans are housed. The Institute for Educational Sciences are the statistics, data collection for educational sciences, right? OFO is our overhead function. That's our HR. That's our contracting shop. By the way, we have two contracting shops. There is the contracts and acquisition management group, and then the federal student aid has a contracting shop. There's a very, very small shop, the National Board of Governors. They do less than $1 million a year. But those are our main contracting offices. They're all centrally located in the DC area, as well as all of our program offices. The only other program office that may be worth kind of flushing out, Office of Secondary Education. You might say, Calvin, I'm an IT company. Why do I care about that? Well, we do a lot. All of these offices have systems, IT systems within them, right, that are managing these programs, right? So the Migrant Education Office has a IT system that they're managing. There's going to be a contract that's going to come out and very soon for an IT asset. So that's where you can find a place. All right. So I also wanted to look at I feel like it's very important for you to understand the North American industry classification system data, because it's going to be very helpful for your capture, right? And so these numbers are representative of where we are in terms of spending and the percentages. And I wanted to do this for a couple different reasons. One, so you can kind of see where the preponderance of our dollars are going, the allocations and distributions of said dollars, and how that relationship is with our small business programs in terms of percentages, but also so you can see where there may be growth opportunities, right? So what do you mean in terms of growth opportunities? Well, anywhere we need to grow, that is always apparent, but there's certain marketplaces which are very difficult, but we can still, there's still opportunity to grow. So educational support services, that's a good place for us to grow. You see research and development in the social sciences and humanities. Those two codes are where we do a lot of statistics work, a lot of surveying work, and where I think we can grow significantly more. We do have a long-term strategy to attack and diagnose methodologies for penetrating this top marketplace here, where we spend $1.2 billion. Traditionally, we are using very large contracts to satisfy those requirements. And so a lot of what we've been talking about is, hey, is there a possibility for us to leverage partial set-asides? Can we look at how we typically have done work in the past and leverage some of the subcontracting plans that we've put in place to determine if we can matriculate our next prime contractors by identifying what current work is going on by small businesses, being conducted by small businesses, and what that marketplace looks like. Just to kind of give you a sample of what we're doing here. And this is by social economic indicator, where our small business spending has been over the years. Okay, and so here is the NAICS code spending for small business, and I want to just take a couple moments to look at the data, because you can see there's been a significant amount of change in programs, and because there's been a significant change in our programs, you will see the NAICS code spending kind of rack and stack, and the shift looks a little different. But this is good for trends and good for determining what 23 and 24 and 25 might look like. So I'll go back one more time. You can see that other activities related to credit and collection agencies is the top two, and now you see them no longer there. Again, that's all directly related to what's happening in federal student aid, and some of the changes that were happening, the programmatic changes. So if you're in professional services, if you're in IT services, there seems to be the trend is that there's going to be more opportunities for sure, based upon that. These are some of the top NAICS codes per socioeconomic category. I will make these slides available, but I know you're probably watching this, so you can probably pause it. So either way, if you need this to be available. So this doesn't mean that we're only using HubZone for certain codes or service disabled veteran small for certain codes. But I want this to resonate with you because this is what drives our new strategy, right? Because what we're doing is really looking at these NAICS codes and determining, okay, well, we know we've spent dollars in these for these socioeconomic groups. How can we maximize the opportunities based upon our historical spending in previous years? And so it takes us a little bit to where we're going, right? And what the future might look like for the department. I'm very pleased to introduce the class strategy. And you might chuckle to yourself and say, oh, that's a little corny. And yes, it is. Or maybe you're thinking it's creative. And I think it might be that too. But it's creating and leveraging acquisitions for small business strategy, class, right? For Department of Education. So class is something that really resonates with my program offices. They have an appetite for a catchy nomenclature like that. So it works. But how does it work for you? You saw the spend data earlier, and the spend data really showed that we were really not adding to the marketplace, especially in the service disabled veteran-owned small business community, though in the same way we were adding in other areas. And sometimes we were kind of receding in certain areas. But the hub zone, we started to see some growth in that area. And part of it is because we were starting so low that any little drop in the bucket would naturally fill up the waters, right? But what we started to identify is that, hey, you know what? There's spending happening across the department, and spending that's happening across the department in many different areas. And then I said, why don't we look at some of these core areas where we know we have a lot of small business participation and we spend a lot of dollars, right? And you can really remember from those previous screens that maybe commercial banking isn't a place where we should spend a lot of time. Maybe the educational sciences, maybe we may not want to spend a lot of time there, even though we spend a lot of money. Because do we know if there's enough small businesses there to do it? So I went to the deputy secretary and said this, we need a strategy because what we're doing isn't going to work. And I don't want to go back out and speak before small businesses in good conscience and say that we're doing the best job we can if we have no strategy. It really resonated with the deputy secretary, Cindy Martin. So much so, she said, Calvin, I want you to get a strategy. I want you to put a strategy together. But it even went further, right? Because she actually said to me, hey, Calvin, because one of the first things I did as I advocated in this role, I said, our strategic plans should have small business integrated in it. Why? Because the way strategic plans work in the federal government is once something is in a strategic plan, it trickles down to performance plans. It trickles down to program plans, right? The strategic plan for each of the programs. It's interwoven in the fabric of everything we do. So it had to be there. So for the first time in the department's history, we have small business goals as a part of our strategic plan and maximizing small business. A great time to be. So using that same methodology, I developed a department-wide strategy that looks across our portfolio and says, regardless of our portfolio, we know what the marketplace looks like. We know what the industry base looks like. We know the small businesses that are operating in these industries. We know that. right? SBA has the data, SAM has the data, SAM.gov has the data, not Sam Lee and SBA. SAM has the data. So we know what the small business marketplace is. We had an incorrect system prior. What we would do is we would say, hey, we're going to make this contract a small business set aside. And so we'll put our request for information or source or salt notice out. And we say, hey, we're looking for small businesses. Send us your capabilities if you can do it. And then you know what happens? We go silent. You don't know who it was set aside to. You don't know if it was set aside. You don't know anything until a solicitation comes up, which is way too late because you kind of forgot about it, right? You're like, I remember putting in the RFI. I remember trying to follow up. Maybe the contracting officer maybe didn't respond. Our process was completely broken. Why? Because solicitation comes out. There's no connection between the RFI, a request for information, the source of salt notice, and the solicitation. And subsequently, we're surprising our industry base with a set aside. Now, it could be HubZone, it could be women owned, it could be anything, but regardless, they're surprised. We're surprising the marketplace. And if you surprise the marketplace, more than likely, that's not a good vendor relationship management practice. It's just not. You don't want to surprise your suppliers. So what we said was, we're going to use this data to drive our decision making and make sure that instead of our RFI going out or a request for information, a source of salt notice that would go out that would say, hey, I'm looking for small business. No, we know that we miss service disabled veteran-owned small business goals consistently for 10 years. Why can we not set this contract aside and turn the RFI into, hey, we're looking for a service disabled veteran-owned small business. We're looking for you because I know that the participation will be greater. And then what we're going to say is now it's going to be on the forecast and you'll be able to track and know around what quarter, around what time that contract will be released. And now we will change the trajectory of how we continue to do business. And now we have a plan to increase and maximize small business opportunities by identifying on the forecast. Now you may say to yourself, Calvin, that seems pretty obvious. Why isn't everybody doing that? Just because it's obvious doesn't make it easy. Because what I had to do was look at our historical data, look at our current forecasted requirements for 23, and then I had to meet with all the program offices in which I gave them a proposal and said, this should be service disabled veteran-owned small business set aside. It should be women-owned. It should be HubZone. Gave them a proposal. I gave them a week and a half to make a decision, yes or no. Whatever was yes was added to the forecast. Whatever was no was a small business set aside. And the cool thing about what we're doing is it's allowing us to engage in ways in which we have never engaged before. It's allowing us to now say, so I encourage everyone, go to our forecast and you will see more service disabled veteran-owned small business set-asides than you've ever seen on an education forecast because we've never done it. For the first time, I've been able to push not the contracting officers, but the program, senior executive program officers to support the programs earlier on, right? Now, the only way that this will not work is if they do the market research and there's not enough service disabled veteran-owned small businesses, but I will call shenanigans because we've already did the data. So we already know that the marketplace is saturated, right? I'm not looking for a little bit of evidence of a marketplace. I want a saturated marketplace. So there's, without a reasonable doubt, true evidence that we can set these contracts aside. So I'm really excited what we're doing. We have more service disabled veteran-owned small business set-asides not only we've ever had on the forecast, probably ever in a given year. All in the IT services space. And as we start to get better with this, our next year forecast will probably have even more. And so as we start to determine how we build this program out, the good thing is it's going to be sustainable. We'll be able to do this over and over again. We'll be able to pivot. So let's say we fall under the 5% women-owned small business goal, and we maximize the services able veteran-owned small business goal, which if every contract is awarded that's on the forecast, we will get very close. But let's say we fall below on the women-owned, we can shift the focus from service disabled, not completely, not take contracts away, but any new contracts for 2024, we can put a greater focus on a women-owned small business, right? Knowing that we have a lot of those 2023 contracts that are captured in the program. And so we know what that growth is going to be for the next 5 years. And we're going to continue to grow even if we do some allocation, right? So we're not going to take programs out. We're not doing that. We're only applying it to new contracts. New contracts. All right. And so this is my Otabu team. Please reach out to me. I know everybody wants to talk to the director, but I have a lot of talented people that are on my staff that are willing to help. I have them assigned to different program offices. And so if you ever want to, hey, Calvin, I want to know a little bit about the CIO, Javette Johnson. If, hey, I want to know a little bit about FSA, Javette Johnson. Hey, I want to know a little bit more about Institute for Educational Sciences, Deborah Suarez. You see where this is going. We have allocations and they're dedicated, right? Because I figured that focus, that dedicated focus, I call it the white glove service, needs to be present if we really want to get engagement with our program offices. Here's some quick resource links for you. I know the PTAC has changed their name to a fancy name, the Apex Accelerator. It sounds like a Star Trek move or something. I know
that sounds like the Predator.
Yeah, it does, right? It sounds very sci-fi, but
Yeah,
I like it.
does.
It's cool, right? I guess it's cooler than PTech, so I get it. But our forecast link is there. Please, everyone, register in our small business customer experience tool. That's an investment that the department has allowed me to make. You're able to upload capability statements. You're able, when our contracting officers are doing market research, they can see your profiles in the system. My good friend Shannon Jackson over HHS has a very similar service, a very similar product, but you have to register for both. We don't share information, but those are our resources. All right, and so I'll stop sharing and all right, we should be back.
Oh, okay, great. So remind people again where to find those opportunities. To go on your
Yeah, we're
website.
right on our forecast. We
Okay.
have all our contracts there, and you can look through and determine that should have contact names. But if
Okay.
you ever want to reach out to me for whatever reason, you can do that.
Yeah, and they will answer their phones. 'Cause I know one of the biggest complaints when I was in the Air Force Small Business Program that you can't get a hold of anybody.
Right,
I still get that
right.
today. So, but Calvin's office is one of the few offices that when you call, there'll be a live person that answers the phone.
Yeah, and
So
if you don't, let me know because
yeah,
I will guarantee you I will respond.
great. Well, that was a buttload of information. Gosh, I mean, well, thank you so much. I know that the veteran community is excited that you have these set asides for veterans, and I know if don't delay, start looking at his website right now and see what you could provide to Calvin's office. So, but thank you so much. Thank
No
you. I
problem.
think you answered everything. I know we talk about the forecast. We talk about your, what the Department of Education buys. I mean, you covered everything that what we need to hear.
Yeah,
So,
and so my thing is if I can give as much information as possible, you will want to participate in our marketplace.
mhm.
And if you want to participate in my marketplace, I'm going to keep working hard to make sure those opportunities are there. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to partnering with you guys.
Oh, great. Are you going to vets this
I'm
year?
going to vets. I'm going to
Okay,
vets.
great. So we do have some networking opportunities.
Yep.
Please, if you see Calvin's count us open down at Vets, please help us calendar and have a chat with him. Have your 5 minute elevator pitch open. Make sure you practice and sit down with Calvin and have a chat with him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic. I
yeah,
love looking forward to it.
yeah. Me too. Me too. So everybody who's ever watching YouTube, we got the information. Like he said, if you need the information, freeze the video, copy it down, and contact Calvin and his team, because his team is wonderful to deal work with. Definitely.
Thank you.
All right. So everybody, thank you for this inaugural edition of Taking Care of Government Business. We have a couple more to go, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Thank you,
Thank you,
Calvin.
sir.
All right. Whew.